Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Anusha and I'm the social media manager here at Lantotech. I will be your host for this evening and I welcome you all to our webinar on building a career in UI UX. The purpose of this virtual event is to provide you with all the information you need to know about UI UX design and how it will help you in your career path. So before we move on to the core of our webinar, let me introduce you guys to our panel speakers for today. So first, we have Abdul Hasib, our talented multimedia designer at Lantotech.
So, hello everyone. I'm Abdul Hasib with over 6 years of experience in video production and animation, UI, UX, and graphic design. I've had pleasure of spending nearly 3 years at Latotech, and I'm excited to share my experience in this webinar and looking forward to have a great conversation with everyone.
Next, we have Mahin Fareed, our expert graphic designer at Lantotech.
Hello everyone, I'm Mahin. I'm a self-taught graphics and UI UX designer with about 5 years of experience. I've been with Lantotech for nearly 2 years now. I'm super thrilled to be a part of this discussion today and to share a little bit about my journey and experience with you all.
And finally, we have a very special guest, Usman Fiaz, who is also the CEO of Design Peeps. We are very thankful, Usman, that you took some time out today to join us for this informative webinar. So can you please say a little line about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation and thank you so much for the kind words. Usman Fiaz, I'm CEO of Design Peeps with over close to a decade of experience in design. I'm Y Combinator alumni as well, and specifically talking about the design side, my work has been used by some names like FIFA during the Qatar World Cup, being the only designer, Pakistani designer there, and then I've designed ticketing system for the FIFA, Disney USA, Qatar Airways, Al Jazeera, to name a few. But right now, Design Peeps is a design specialist, product design specialist agency where we help startups and business founders to make better products. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Usman. So before we officially begin, please note down a few things. For this is for the audience. So your mics will be muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and we will answer all the relevant questions at the end of our webinar. Throughout the session, we will be keeping things interactive by generating some polls. So make sure you take part in that. Now, let me walk you through the agenda for today. So, firstly, we will be introducing you to Lantotech and its services. Then, we will be discussing in detail about the principles of UI UX design, followed by the essential skills required for success in UI UX design. We will also cover the pathways for career advancement. We will talk about portfolio building. And lastly, we will have a Q&A session to address all your queries regarding design. Now, let me give you a brief introduction about Lantotech. So, we are basically a tech services company with an international client base. Our spotlight service is estimation and design, and we also offer a suite of IT services, including design and animation, digital marketing, and web development. So, before we give an overview of building a career in UI UX, Mahin and Hasib, how about both of you take the stage and discuss the principles of UI UX design and why they're so important?
Sure, Nusha. So there are actually various different design principles, but let's start with the most common ones, like user-centered design. When you're creating a website or an app, the core of user-centered design is to focus on the needs and preferences of your users. Once you understand your audience, you can create an experience that's not just functional, but fun too. Then there's accessibility. Think of accessibility as making sure that everyone, regardless of their abilities or disabilities, can use your design. This could mean making sure that your website works well with people with visual impairments, or that your color choices are friendly for those with color blindness. By incorporating accessibility into your design from the very beginning, you make sure that your design is more usable and inclusive. We have lots of helpful tools as well that can help check if your design is accessible or not. I'll be leaving the links to these tools within the chat to check them out. Hasib, why don't you go ahead and explain why consistency and simplicity are important in UI design?
Thanks, Mahin. So let's talk about consistency here. Think of consistency as the glue that holds your design together. It's about maintaining uniformity in elements like colors, fonts, and written styles throughout your app or website. If you're building a website, your user should feel in control of their actions. And next, we have simplicity. Simplicity is about keeping things clear and uncluttered. Think of it as decluttering your desk. You only keep what's necessary and make sure everything has its place. In design, simplicity simply means taking away unnecessary elements. It might distract or confuse users. So, Mahim, why don't you explain the next principle?
Sure. So another important principle is visual hierarchy, which is all about organizing elements on a screen in such a way that the most important information stands out. In design, visual hierarchy helps guide users' attention to the key elements first, like using a larger font for headlines and placing buttons in prominent positions. It's about making sure that users can navigate your design efficiently. Whereas affordance refers to design elements that hint at their function. For example, a button should look clickable, a slider should look draggable. It's like putting up signs that say press here on your design elements. And basically, good affordance helps users understand what they can do without requiring any additional instructions. Hasi, why don't you guide our audience about feedback and error handling?
Thanks, Mahim. That was quite insightful. So moving on to next one, feedback. And feedback is like the little nudge that lets user know their actions are having an effect. Imagine you are in a conversation and you say something, you expect a response, right? So similarly, when users interact with the design, like clicking a button or filling out a form, they need to know their actions has been acknowledged. And feedback can come in many forms, like a small animation, a change in button color, or a message confirming an action. This reassurance helps user feel confident that they are on the right track. And next we have error handling. Error handling is like having a helpful guide who steps in when things go wrong. When user encounter issues, whether it's a broken link or a form submission error, uh, they need clear guidance on how to fix it. For instance, instead of a vague error 404, a helpful message might say, oops, we couldn't find the page you were looking for, or something like that. This approach not only helps user correct mistake, but also reduces frustration and keep their experience as smooth as possible. So, Mahim, we can go to some examples of the principle.
Yeah, let's see some of these principles in action. The Google user interface is a great example of simplicity in UI design. There's only a search bar, the logo, and everything is kept very minimal with no distractions, so users are able to find exactly what they're looking for.
And next, we have an example of visual hierarchy, and it's quite clear in e-commerce sites like Amazon and Daraz. The product titles and prices stand out, while other details like reviews and description are arranged to naturally guide your attention.
WhatsApp is a great example of feedback. When you send a message on WhatsApp, the app shows real-time status updates like sent, delivered, read, and even typing indicators. These little visual cues help the users know that their message is being processed, and they kind of keep you in the loop.
And accessibility is a key principle as we discussed. And Apple iOS show their commitment to inclusivity. They offer feature like voiceover for users with vision impairments, switch control for those with motor challenges, and dynamic type for adjusting font sizes to suit different visual needs.
There's actually a great article on how leading tech companies and brands use these UI principles. I'll drop the link in the chat for you guys. You guys should definitely give it a read.
So, Usman, would you like to add something based on your industry experience in case we have missed an important principle?
No, I think you covered the basics. All that matters is as long as your design is functional enough and intuitive enough for anyone to use it. I often say this to my designers as well. If your design requires a user to think about it, that means design is flawed. So you must be thinking from a very realistic and user's perspective. If the design is able to help the user to achieve the primary goal. So let's say if you give the example of Google, the primary goal when you go there is to so you should be able to start your query and start searching. If your design is able to do that, then it's doing the good job. So you can judge against the your key metrics and the KPIs. What are the key goals that you want to achieve with the design? Other than that, you have covered pretty much all of the basics things.
All right, so now let's take a look at our first poll, which is about design comparison. So this is just a quick test for our audience here. Which of the two samples shown on the screen is more similar to this or that? So we'll just give a couple of minutes while the audience is voting.
I see most of the audience is going with option A, this.
Yes.
Yes, which is the correct answer because there's a clear difference between the primary and secondary buttons. So good job, guys.
So now let's dive into our first question. Mahin, what skills are essential for a UI UX designer?
Well, being a UI UX designer myself, I think the most important thing is being comfortable with design tools like Adobe XD, Sketch, or Figma for creating and prototyping. But you also need a good eye for how design elements like fonts and colors and layout look and work together on a screen. And apart from that, apart from the tools, soft skills are really crucial as well, like understanding what the users need and being able to clearly communicate your ideas. So basically, thinking from a user's perspective is what's really important.
So now let's address a very important question that is on everybody's mind. That is a design degree essential for a successful career in UI UX? Hasib, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, honestly, having a design degree like graphic design or interaction design is a plus. But honestly, it all depends on your creativity and eye for design. Some research on user interfaces and latest design trends can help too. You can definitely learn a lot on your own through online courses or just by practicing. So, being a media studies graduate myself from NUST, I didn't have much experience in this field back then. And I started learning UI UX on my own in my free time and completed some online certification and gained experience out of that. So, it really shows that while having a degree can help, but it's not the only path to success. You have to build your experience and showcase your skill set. So Mahin, do you have some beginner-friendly courses for our audience?
Oh, yes, I'll be leaving links to some great courses that really helped me in my career. Do have a look.
So the next question is for you, Usman. What do you think the job market looks like for UI UX designer nowadays? Are there any predictions or trends that they should be aware of?
Okay. Sorry. So I was just saying, job market, there's huge demand of designers. Uh, I was I keep interacting with the clients as well. There is a great demand of designer. There might be this, I would say, speculation that AI will replace, but AI is not going to replace the creativity as soon as we might be. The main thing that I was talking about is our designers, especially if we talk in context of Pakistan. Designers lack the depth, especially when we talk about UI UX. UI UX includes whole lot of range of things. If you want to be good in UI UX, it's not just you study the tool. Like it's just a medium to convey your message. Tool is just a medium to do that. You can learn it, I'm sure, in a week or so. But if you want to actually learn the design, you need to study the philosophy, you need to study the culture, you need to study the psychology. You need to understand all the circumstances and the environment included in whatever product you are working on. So if you have that much of depth in you and you have that much of intuition within you, which you develop with, you read a lot of books, you read a lot of, there are times when we have to read the manuals as well for different products that we are designing for. So that's something that I feel designers are missing on. Other than that, there's a huge demand of creativity. There's a great demand of product design, UI, UX, product design, because you see now everything, every single thing is being digitalized. And with that increasing demand, it's the designer who is going to design all of those things. There's crazy demand. We need designers all the time. We are looking on for the good talent. But the thing is, as I said, our talent is missing on the depth. We are not willing to put that much effort. Reading books is one of the things. One should be reading as many books as you can, but and also applying that knowledge. And list goes on. Listen to the podcast, observe around yourself, read psychology, read philosophy. That's how you come up with different solutions, not just wrapper of some existing application. That's how you come up with solution, not just design. UI UX is beyond just making fancy screens, beyond just putting buttons on the screens. It's more about coming up with a solution that will have impact on the lives of your audience, whoever is going to use that. If you have that much of empathy within you, then I think it's now one of the most demanded job or the talent in the market.
Thank you, Usman. I completely agree with you. I think you have covered everything. So now let's
Thank
move
you.
on. And so moving on, Mayan, this question is for you. What are the common pathways to becoming a UI UX designer?
Oh, well, frankly, I don't think there's one single path. Some people can start off with a design degree, while others might come from different backgrounds like psychology or even engineering. It's really all about you applying your skills to solving user problems. And you can get some hands on experience through internships, self learning, or doing some freelance work to help you figure out where your strengths lie, what you like doing the best. That's it.
All right. So, Hasib, what is your thought process when you're working on a UX centric approach? Um, how do you approach that problem? How does it vary based on interaction tools such as when you're working on the web screens or mobile or even tablet?
Okay, so when I'm tackling a UX problem, I like to keep things structured to make sure we are really focused on what the user need. I usually start by doing some research, looking at who the users are, how they behave, and what issues they are facing. From there, I work on mapping out on how user will interact with the product, starting with a sitemap. This helps me set up feedback loops to improve the experience, and I move from low to high fidelity prototypes while refining the design based on the feedback I get. And I actually see UX design as an ongoing process. So I'm always tweaking things even after the initial design is ready. And when it comes to web, the main focus is basically making sure the design is responsive and works well across different screen sizes, whether it's mobile and tablet. And especially in mobile and tablet, it's more of you have to take care of touch, especially to the gestures and all animations it's around that. So I hope that gives you a clear picture.
Thank you, Hasib. So, as the audience who have joined us today are mainly students, and Usman, being an expert yourself, what tips would you like to give to aspiring designers who are just starting out in this field?
And if I may add to previous question as well, agreeing to what Hasib said, uh, and one when we talk about user UX centric design, we need to make sure and get out of our own biases. That's something that I keep saying to all the designers, that you are not designing for yourself, you are designing for the users. And when we say users, we need to be clear on what we mean by it. It's not for your boss, it's not for your manager, it's not for the founder. Make sure you get out of your own biases. Sometimes we have the biases when we are making designing something. uh, Coming to some tips for the aspiring designers, as I said, to the in follow up of the previous answer, I said, make sure whatever you are doing, you're doing it with the heart. and you are irreplaceable wherever you are. If you are just learning the tool, it's easy to replace you in a week or two. And tool is something that can be taught easily. If I can teach you a tool, I can teach it to somebody else as well. So make sure, and the resources that you're using, make sure that they are of that quality, because it's way too difficult to unlearn something when you have learned it as compared to learning something from the scratch. So when you're starting learning designing, make sure you're learning from the good resources. You're putting your efforts in the right direction. If I name a few, uh, inst- other than just learning the tool, you can learn the tool, and I don't think learning a tool is really an art. But it's difficult, of course, not for everyone, but make sure you are reading, let's say, NNG Group, TopTel, IXD, Interaction Design Foundation, IXDF. uh, you will find good articles on Medium as well. uh, I think these 4 or 5 resources, if you go, there's more than enough to keep you busy for 2 3 months as aspiring designers. Make sure you're reading the thought behind everything instead of just wondering, okay, this screen is there and why. Uh, think of the reasons why designers have made it this way, and read as many case studies as you can, not on Behance but on Medium, but on the detailed case studies that cater use cases beyond, I would say, just technical side of the things, not just design system, not just colors, not just typography, but they cater the psychology behind it. So the more you read it, the more better you will understand the design, the more healthier solution you will be coming up with.
So we definitely have to think out of the box when it comes to design, right?
Definitely.
So on that note, let's take a look to our next poll, which is on typography. So which of the two typography styles is more effective for UI UX design? We'll just wait a couple of minutes as our audience votes.
I see most of the audience is going with option A, this, which is the correct answer because the use of clear, limited, and readable fonts can make the text easier to navigate, while overly stylized fonts can be harder to read and it can ruin the user experience.
So now, Hasib, can you give some examples of some famous websites for design inspiration that you use on a daily basis?
Uh, yeah, so for designing any website or mobile app, I go to different inspirational websites, and particularly I find awards and design inspiration useful. And awards highlights innovative and award-winning design, which can spark fresh ideas. Design inspiration allows me to search by themes and style, which can help me gather focus inspiration. Additionally, just like Usman said, I check out design articles on Medium, which can provide valuable insights and trend application, and those were really helpful. So, what about you, Mahim?
When I'm looking for new ideas or design trends, I usually turn towards Dribble or Behance. This is because these sites provide a very diverse range of design styles. And then I make use of Pinterest to create mood boards to really capture the essence of the inspirations I find. And we have some really cool inspiration websites for you guys. I'll share them in the chat. Feel free to have a look.
And I think Pinterest is also a good resource.
Definitely.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Instead of remembering all the websites, you can just search in the Pinterest and it will direct you to so many other websites.
Yeah.
Yes. So now moving on, Usman, how important do you think is user research in UI UX design?
It's oxygen to the design, I would say. The more you have it, good it is. As I said, making a product is all about knowing good about your user who are going to use it. The goal of any product that you're making should be to become part of the environment of your users. It should not feel like something external. if it feels like eventually there will come a point when user will leave or stop using it or will forget about it. So how do you make something that is that feels like part of the environment is when you know about your users. You know what the pain points are, you know what the goals are, why a user want the solution that you are working on. Why is it a problem for that person? Is it something that you should be solving or not? This is also part of the user research. Is it something you should be, is if the user is bothered enough about the problem that you want to work on or not? And then designing the user personas and all of that. User research is critical if you want to save a lot of iteration money on a iteration. Many companies first build the product, then put for the user research, then they scratch it all and scrap it all, and then start from is because there is a gap between what you are making and what users want. Research is the way to fill that gap.
So, Haseeb, based on your experience, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I believe it's actually super important, and Usman covered most of the things. I can give you my example. When I started UI UX, there was a website of a gym. So there were different things going on, the memberships, and there was like their group classes. So we have to. That was their most important things. So we have to design accordingly. So that again come to the point that user research is really important, uh, because you have to know what's bother a user, and you can be creative as well. So that's about it. This is like super important, as we already discussed.
Okay, thank you. So now, Usman, how can designers measure the success of their UI UX designs? What kind of metrics or feedback should they be looking at?
I think it's simple. If design is helping the user to achieve a goal, if it's a login screen, if I'm able to log in smoothly, it's achieving the goal. If it's a e-commerce cart, if I'm able to, uh, there could be different metrics. Is if depending upon the domain to domain. When you talk about the e-commerce, uh, the metrics could be the completion rate, how many users are completing from the moment they add something to the cart till they check out. How many steps do they go through, and if they are completing all of those steps, maybe the churn rate might be higher. Then you look into the flow where you're missing out on the users and where you're dropping your customers. So as long as you're one basic metrics could be if your users are able to complete or achieve the goal they are supposed to. And if your conversion, if you talk about the number of people landing on the website, number of people using the mobile application, the number of conversion or the retention rate can tell you good enough about the success of the design. But it can sometime it can also be about the technical side of things, but mostly you can judge on these things: conversion rate, rate, what are the what how successful is the product overall is.
Thank you, Usman. So now moving on, Mahin, I've seen your awesome portfolio on Behance. So for those just starting out in this field, where's the best place for them to start?
I'd say start with something you're passionate about. Maybe it's redesigning an app that you use every day or coming up with a cool new way to organize information. Just show off what you can do and how you tackle problems. And don't worry if you don't have a lot of experience because even small projects can show off your skills and creativity. All you have to do is make sure that you explain why you made certain design choices and then just keep learning and keep growing. We will share some great portfolio sites in the chat to help inspire you as well.
What about you, Usman? How important do you think is portfolio for a UX individual?
Mm. This is all you should have, even more important than the CV. If you have a good portfolio, that will land you a good job. If you don't have, doesn't matter if you have good CV or not, you will be it will be difficult to land on a good job. You need a good portfolio, and for experienced designers, for portfolio, you might need to work on concept designs, concept projects, and please don't start redesigning Facebook. Please don't start redesigning all the famous applications. There are teams behind everything. A huge number of team work on a number of people work on a feature of product like Facebook. The, maybe start look around in your own surrounding, something that you are passionate about. Let's say if you play cricket, maybe design a cricket application. It could just the top of the my mind is it could be like a community application for all the people who play local cricket, so that they can check if if somebody is organizing a match, they can join a club, they can organize a tournament. So a solution or a problem that you can immediately relate to or immediately can study about. You have access to information of whatever problem there might be in your surrounding. Maybe just do some work, concept work on that, and you don't need to make 8 or 10 portfolio projects to get a job to be initially. Uh, don't worry about filling your Behance timeline. Just if you make two good case studies, you will land at a job. Sometime even one is good enough, but then you have to have that good of one case study. But two or maximum of three are sufficient enough at most of the times to land an interview at least. Then it's in your court, ball is in your court, how well you play in the interview.
Yes, definitely. So now let's take a look at our final poll, which is about call to action buttons. Which design do you think is more effective in encouraging user interaction? So let's wait for the audience to vote.
Okay, so I see most of the audience chose option A, this, which is correct. The prominent call to action buttons with clear, vibrant colors are much more effective for user interaction compared to the dull, less noticeable button on the other side. Great choice, everyone.
So now, before we dive into our Q&A session, Usman, I have a final question for you. So could you tell us a little bit about your personal journey as the CEO of Design Peeps, and how is your experience leading in this field so far?
It's great. I think a couple of people from my team are listening to it as well. I can't say anything other than that. But leading them is great, but you have to have a good team. I'm fortunate enough to have a good team, alhamdulillah. Uh, but of course, it's difficult. You have to keep up with the pace. And talking about the journey, I started as graphic designer, then I dived into branding, identity designer, then UI UX, accidentally, in fact, UI UX, and now product design and product design consultant. That's what I'm doing. If anyone have specific questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
All right, thank you, Usman. So now let's dive into our Q&A session. Let's take a look what our audience have asked us. So the first question is from Fatma Naveed. She asks, can you please share some tips on building a strong portfolio that stands out to potential employers?
Let me
Or
take
I can answer it, yeah.
Uh,
So I would say focus on quality over quantity, like Usman suggested as well. Showcase your best work, even if it's just a few projects, even if it's one or two. Highlight your design process and not just the final result, so employers can see exactly how you're tackling the entire problem. And I'd say include a mix of projects, like they can be personal or freelance or redesigns, and modify your portfolio according to the job that you're applying for.
All
That's
right.
just.
So the next question is from Josefa. He asks, what key skills should a beginner focus on when starting a career in UI UX design? Hasib, you can take this one.
okay, so for beginners, I'd say start with the basics like color theory, typography, and layout, understanding the importance of user research and how to create user personas. and also get comfortable with the design tools like Figma or Sketch, and of course practice. The more you design, the better you will get.
So the next question is from Momna. She asks, what are the most common challenges that new UI UX designers face, and how can they overcome them? Osman, you can take this one.
I think it's lack of direct direction and especially the confusion between UI and the UX. Sometimes they are learning the both and they don't really know what direction they should go. It's challenge is most more about the direction, what thing they should be learning on. And if I talk about the basic roadmap for the UI designer, UI UX designer, first you need to figure out put two things separately. UI is different, UX is different. It's not just the simple definition how it look and how it feels. It's beyond that. Maybe you can start with the UI if we say, or maybe the UX. Start reading the case studies. Start working on a problem. Start working on finding a solution for the problem before you jump on to the design. Make user flow, make personas, make do the research. Once you are clear on your research, then you can go further. Then you can learn the tool and then do the UI thing.
So the next question is from Yavar. He asked, "Can I get an internship in Lantotech for UI UX design?" So Yavar, currently we're not hiring, but you can still send in your CV at our website lantotech.com on the careers page, and our HR team will take a look at it. So the next question is from Mohammed Takreem. He asks, "What key skills should a beginner focus on when starting a career in UI UX design?" Mahin, you can take this one.
Like Hasib suggested, key skills are again learning the color theory, color psychology, user research is really important, and of course the tools like Adobe XD, Sketch, and Figma.
Next, Kiran asks, "What should we focus on in an entry-level job? Which principle should we follow?" Usman, you can take this one.
Can you repeat the question?
Kiran is asking, what should we focus on in an entry-level job? Which principle should we follow?
In an entry level job, I think for an entry level job, you should, if you have done with the if you have done some portfolio work, focus more on the how than the what. And frankly speaking, if I am hiring someone, I'm not interested in knowing if you know the fancy names of the terms. As long as you understand what you have done, I'm not interested in knowing this is Hex law and this is proximity law and all those things. It's good to have knowledge about them, but it should be more about, I would say, uh, design should be clear. You can focus more on the grids. You can focus more on the layout. It should be neat. You can focus more on the typography. If you want to be really good in design, you need to learn a lot and a lot of about the typography. Typography is not just the font sizes, font weights. Uh, a typography has the one key role in making a good design. So maybe you should be focusing on making design cleaner as much as possible by focusing on grids, layout, typography.
Saad is asking, this question is for you, Usman. He's asking, what skills and level of skill set should one try to achieve to get into this industry as a beginner, more specifically for a remote job? So, Usman, if you could highlight a basic roadmap for both UI, UX, because as beginners, we tend to apply for everything available.
Saad, okay. I think to begin, if you, as you said, to get into this industry, just basic. I think I would just put the basic roadmap. You start with the, as I said, just start reading case studies, start learning layout, start the grid, start learning grid system, start learning typography, practice typography as much as you can. There's good playlist of the future without E at the end. If you search the typography, the future, you will find 14 videos playlist. It's great. Uh, I can't put even enough emphasis on that. Everyone should watch that. And if you want to then go for maybe then learn about further UI part, then start learning the components. If you're learning in the Figma, start learning frames, start learning then maybe you can learn the design system, but that comes later. But if I'm hiring someone at the beginner role and I know they know the grids and the typography good enough as a beginner, their design speaks for that. Then I will be convinced enough to hire. And for the UX roadmap, it's all about research. It's more literature than the designing part. It's all literature. Read as many articles. Let's say if I give you a simple example, I'm sure you must have selected time zone at different websites. Do you know, have you ever wondered why the time zone is displayed in certain order, let's say GMT +5 in which country? At some websites, GMTs, at some website, it's in different. There's a whole psychology behind it. Just go and Google time zone psychology. I think it's on NNG. There's an article on NNG. You will find the whole psychology. For the UX, read a lot of articles. You will eventually get your in some direction. Read articles, read more about the logics behind the designs, read the case studies by the good designers again. And the case studies, I don't mean this the fancy one on the Behance, but rather practical one in the more detailed ways. And
Saad,
also if I can say for the remote job, I just saw that he mentioned remote job. For as a beginner, I would rather suggest you to go on premise, because when you see other people around you, other designers, senior designer around you working on some project, you get a lot more of knowledge than sitting at home. So at least for the start, when you are starting out, try joining some office.
Saad also asked how much psychology is used in UX research.
It's all psychology. It's all about psychology. It's all about user behavior. Psychology people are better in UX than the technical people in most of the times. If psychology people have the knowledge of the technical side, they are killer. That's a killer combination that one can have. Because UX, when we talk about experience, if I say it in simple words, when we talk about experience, what is actually an experience is it's how you feel about it, the how a design make you feel about it. Then you have to gauge a user more on the personal and more an empathetic level than anything. It's all about the psychology. I don't think that I can say it's 20% or 30% or 50%.
So Maha is also asking from you, Usman. She asked that kindly mention again which typography video you mentioned to
Mhm.
watch.
Uh, the future without E at the end, THE, space FUTUR, and typography. There's a playlist by Chris Do. And other than that, watch typography critiques on YouTube by the good designers when they're doing critiques on the different typographic posters. You will learn a lot from that.
Right. So Kiran is asking what makes UI UX different from graphic design, as I do not want to work in Adobe. Mahin, you can take this one.
UI, as it says, is a user interface, like it's for websites or apps, whereas graphics is what you see on social media or on banners outside, advertisements. All of that is included in graphics. UI is UI and UX both go hand in hand, and how you make a user feel and how they feel when they're looking at a website. That's all UI, and they're actually completely different fields. And to get into UI, I think you need to be a good graphic designer first.
So next, Maha is asking, can we use the Figma pre-built templates, or we must have to design every design from scratch? Mahan, you can also take this one.
I think you can use pre-built Figma templates. They actually make those so people can use them. I use them myself sometimes, especially when I'm creating portals. You can reuse the buttons and all the iconography there. It actually makes it a lot easier to design it.
All right, so I think that marks the end of our Q&A session. So thank you everyone for joining us today, especially Usman, for your valuable time. You delivered every question and took your time out today to especially join us. So thank you once again. And also Mahin and Hasib for your valuable insights and experiences. And to finally to our audience who made this webinar a huge success, and we hope that we have answered all your questions. But if you still have any queries, you can always reach out to us on our social media platforms and our website. So that marks the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today, and goodbye and have a wonderful evening.